Hello, Alex. Hi. Um, I'm the senior exec of business, and I've been reading about EU Directive 2022 / 2555 on cybersecurity. And obviously, I needed to know whether that affected my business. And I came across the Cloud Work website, which obviously gave me quite a bit of information on it, and I wanted to talk to you about it. So, is that okay?
Yeah, it is. I'll just describe what the directive is, what its purpose, and who does it apply to. Now, obviously, it doesn't apply to micro businesses, and it doesn't apply to very small businesses who don't process much information, even though any business might find it useful if it wants to become stronger and more secure. But it applies mostly to critical infrastructure, financial companies, banks, credit institutions, insurance companies, basically any company which is either critical to a country or to the EU or processes a lot of EU citizen data or stores a lot of EU citizens' data or processes financial transactions for EU citizens. And then the directive would apply to them. Now, as an executive and as someone who might be under the influence of penalties if for not compliance with that directive, it might be useful to you to understand the technical aspects of it. But when reading the material on our website or any website about that directive, do you have any questions which pop out?
I think what attracted me to you to have this call was you say you perform a risk analysis and then you produce a risk assessment. Obviously, we think we have some infrastructure in place, but I'd be interested to know more about the risk analysis and then you develop the sort of risk assessment and then the risk management strategies. So that's obviously what I think my focus would be.
Yeah. Many of the companies who fall under the regulation of this directive have not done risk analysis and risk assessments before in any way, not just for cybersecurity, but any risks. And they'll have to. They'll absolutely have to. It's mandatory to perform a risk analysis and risk assessment. And as something that has never been done, it might be complex the first time you do it, because you have to quantify with numbers the likelihood of certain risks happening in your company. And if you've never had these risks materialize, it's difficult to predict how likely it would be for them to happen in your company. But if you're doing the risk assessment, you can use external information. You can use data on other similar businesses, similar to you, and you can extrapolate that data and apply it to your business. And when we talk about cybersecurity risks specifically, it's even easier because you can use some templates on risk assessment. If you search on Google for Excel files with the name risk assessment template, you'll find dozens. And you can use many of those to help you with your risk assessment process. Of course, it would be much easier if you utilize outside help like ours to help you with the risk assessment, but you can definitely also do it yourself using materials available online and guidelines and templates available online. And I think the regulatory authorities, if you do your job well and if you describe the risks well and analyze them well, they'll accept even a template, of course, if you work properly on it.
Yeah, you mentioned in the on your webpage the sort of resources that are needed, and obviously that will depend on size of businesses. I appreciate, but in terms of a CISO, is that necessary to have one, and what sort of minimum staff would I need within a business?
It all depends on how large your business is, how large the business's IT infrastructure is, how many people do you have, and how many processes from a technology and from a just from a documentation point of view. And let's start with 100-employee company. If your company has 100 employees, you might have enough resources to hire a single security expert as your CISO, as your Chief Information Security Officer, because the regulatory requirements say that you must have someone who helps you with cybersecurity, be it a full-time employee or a whole team. For example, if you have 5,000 employees, you need a whole team. You need like at least 3, probably 10. And I've seen a 3,000 employee company with 75 cybersecurity employees, but that was a telecom company in the Middle East. They had the resources and they had the reason to be worried, and they needed that level of protection. So the spectrum of how many security experts you need on your staff is widely dispersed, but you should have someone. Now, if you're a small company with, let's say, 10 employees or 50 employees, obviously wouldn't make sense to hire a full-time Chief Information Security Officer or a security engineer, just from a financial point of view, or even from a staffing point of view. You might utilize the services of a company offering virtual CISO services. That actually is a great way to augment your staff needs, because you get a whole team of security experts acting as that role.
So this would be a virtual CISO and an external team, would it?
Yes, yes. But the regulation demands that you have someone, be it an outsourced company or an outsourced service or someone on your staff. It's unavoidable. You need someone to help you with cybersecurity.
And I see on the Cloud Work webpage, you talk about this being a sort of minimum 6 months, probably a year sort of project to meet the sort of required standards. Is that the sort of timescales that we should be working to?
Yeah, what many companies where many companies fail with complying with such regulations is they believe that they can have a set of documents, they can prepare a set of documents in a few weeks, and they can provide the documents to the regulatory auditors, and that should be fine. But it's not. The auditors will check if you actually practice what you preach, and if you don't, you fall under an even heavier penalties for trying to deceive the auditors, and they're never happy with that. So to actually implement the practices, the technologies, the software tools, the people, from a cybersecurity point of view, an average company, let's say between 50 and 1,000 employees, the average company would take about 6 months. And potentially, if you have a large IT infrastructure or complex IT infrastructure spanning from on-premise to cloud, you need a year or even more to comply with that regulation, because you need to rework, reorder, and reconfigure all of your servers, all of your endpoints, all of your cloud services to comply. And then you need to create the documentation, the policies, procedures, and you start practicing them. All of that takes time.
Yeah, I think, Alex, obviously when I was sort of reading about this directive, I mean, it's there's sort of questions in my mind was, what should we monitor and what should we report? But clearly that would all become apparent if we work with you, would it?
Well, unfortunately, the regulatory document is vague. It's just saying you should do monitoring and you should do reporting. And then you should monitor for cybersecurity risks. And for a company which never even did any kind of work in cybersecurity, no risk assessments, no security audits, nothing, this is too vague. Like, you should monitor for signs of a potential breach. You should monitor the endpoints, and an endpoint is a mobile phone which is connected to the corporate infrastructure. If it's reading emails, if it's reading confidential information, it's an endpoint. Laptops are endpoints, computers are endpoints, tablets connected to the corporate infrastructure or reading emails are endpoints. So you should monitor endpoints for signs of a breach. You should monitor your servers for signs of a breach. You should monitor your cloud services for signs of a breach. And you should monitor customer data for signs of it appearing on the darknet, on hackers' websites. Obviously, if it appears there was a breach. So that kind of monitoring is the absolute minimum that you should be doing to comply with that regulatory framework. And the reporting, there are two kinds of reporting. You can report useful information or useful signs of attacks, because an attack doesn't have to be successful to be reported. You can see certain kinds of attacks happening against your infrastructure, and if you're a bank, it's useful to share that information, those attacks that are happening to you, with other banks. Why? Because if you share information about attacks happening to you with other banks, then other banks will be more willing to share signs of their attacks with you. And you'll be prepared before the attack comes to you. You'll be prepared to configure your systems in the right way. So that kind of information sharing, or reporting as they call it, is useful. And then obviously, if you suffer any kind of a data breach, you should report it to the appropriate government entity or the cybersecurity department of the local police, or even European authorities, depending on the size of the breach. But you should absolutely report that. But you cannot report a breach if you don't know the breach happened, so you need to do monitoring.
No, well, that's all been very helpful, Alex. I mean, and obviously your sort of experience and expertise has come across in the discussion. I guess then, will I be right in assuming that if we were going to work with you, that you would perhaps suggest a risk analysis in the first instance?
Well, the regulation talks about two important processes that need to happen. Risk analysis and risk assessments is one of the processes that need to happen, and that we can definitely help you with. But another is that you need to have an information security plan. They ask that you have a cybersecurity plan. And how do you create such a plan? I mean, if you're not a cybersecurity expert, you don't know what to do, yet alone how to do it. So in order to have a plan, you need someone, not necessarily us, it could be any cybersecurity company, we can help as well. You need a security assessment, which comes in, the security experts come in, and they assess all your technologies, the processes that you have in place, the on-premise or cloud services that you have in place, the data and how you store it, the databases, everything. They assess everything against a certain security standard, and then they see, oh, here you have gaps here, 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 and here, and then they create a plan for you. So the cybersecurity plan is an output of a security assessment, is the result of the security assessment. And then the security plan can tell you, here are the urgent steps that are absolutely urgent. You need to fix them, or you might be breached in a few weeks, right? And then it prioritizes things based on your business objectives, based on your resources, because there are expensive solutions and there are cheap solutions, and based on also on the regulatory requirements and the potential penalties. So based on all those factors, the security company comes in and creates a cybersecurity or information security plan, which is required by the regulation.
Okay, well, the CloudWork webpage was very helpful. Obviously, there's been a good discussion. I don't know if there's anything else that I need to know from you, and also how do I sort of get engaged with you then from here?
Well, the first thing that I would recommend is getting acquainted with the regulatory document, which is in government online resources.
Yeah.
The second thing I would recommend is the article which is linked in the description of this video. Just read the article. It will become clear what you need to do, how it needs to be done. And then if you decide to work with us, it's very easy. Just click on the contact page and reach out, and we'll be happy to help.
Yeah, and and obviously, you know, I've had a good discussion with you. Could I initially engage with you?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else you wanted to tell me before we go?
No, just have a look at the webpage linked in the description of the video, and then we can, if you decide to work with us, we'll proceed further.
All right. Okay. Well, that's been very helpful, and thanks for your time.
Thank you too, Ian.